Let's look at a couple things. As you know, I think that Democrats and Republicans both are equally unconcerned with your well-being and your what would be good for the average voter. But that being said, there are areas where we can observe a measurable difference in what happens when a Democrat is in the White House and what happens when a Republican is in the White House. Two of these areas are jobs and the stock markets, Lewis, as you know. Let's look at one at a time. Since JFK, we've had 23 years of Democrats in the White House and 28 years of Republicans in the White House. During the Democrats' 23 years in the White House, 42 million new jobs have been created. Now, during the 28 years of Republicans in the White House, only 24 million jobs have been created. Now, Republicans will, of course, argue that this has to do with a number of other things, the least of which is having a Democratic president. I mean, what would they say, Lewis? What are the different things that they would say to point out why Republicans have created barely more than half the jobs Democrats have in 5 additional years?
Well, see, I don't know if I like numbers like this and the way this is laid out, because
oh boy,
this is something the Republicans would say. It's also something I'm going to say. There are policies that are put in place by Republican presidents that carry over into the terms of Democratic presidents and vice versa.
Like what?
I'm just saying this happens.
Oh, so
this happens.
In theory, but you can't name any.
Not off the top of my head. No.
Aha.
And you're saying this doesn't happen? What are you trying to call me out on? I'm
saying we should be able to identify something if we're going to use
I'm sure
that.
If I looked it up, I could identify something. Are you saying this doesn't happen?
I'm not saying policies can't extend beyond a particular president. But what I'm saying is when we're observing the trend over this many years, you would really have to believe something that's just about absurd, which is that every Republican policy took until that president left to work at creating jobs while Democrats were president. And by inversion, that every destructive Democratic policy did nothing negative while the Democrat was still in the White House, but as soon as they left, started destroying jobs. Who believes that, Lewis?
Don't get me wrong. I do believe that the Democrats are definitely...
You're playing devil's advocate.
I am. Better at creating jobs. But, of course, Republicans will say, well, look, this policy was put in place by this president. It lasted this long. It extended into this presidency, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and then you really have to get into the minutia of it to prove if they're correct or not.
Okay. Natan, what do you think?
I mean, I do agree with Lewis that we would need to look at more studies and different types of numbers to get a really good idea, but also just the fact that it really doesn't just depend on the administration. There are cyclical elements in place in the economy, and there are also just not cyclical events, but political events.
There are.
Like wars, for example, that have affected economic cycles.
There are, but longer...
I'm not saying that what you're about to say isn't true.
The longer we observe this, those coincidences have to be less and less when we're talking about averages over long periods of time. Second part of this, stock market performance. I've talked about this many times before. I don't believe that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is the end-all, be-all, end-all. However you want to say it, I don't care. It's not the ultimate judge of whether the economy is doing well or not well. But what we do know is that it is one factor, the same way that jobs is a factor. And stocks, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and stocks in general do significantly better under Democratic presidents than Republican presidents. Same argument can be made. It's all that great Republican policy that waited until a Democrat got in the White House to bump up the stock market, and vice versa when it comes to Republican gains in the stock market, which are paltry compared to Democratic gains. Just the longer we look at this, Lewis, since 1920, since the Great Depression, 1929, the more evidence we have. And it's one thing after another. So we have to admit that there is a difference between Democrats and Republicans, although increasingly when it comes to how they are affected by money in politics and having the real interests of the country in mind, there is less and less of a distinction.
That is true. And I will say that the stock market is a trend that is